What's up, everybody? Nate, Startup Nation here. I got a very special guest, so I will introduce her, but I'll let her do more of the introduction to herself. Rebecca Jones, Mayor of San Marcos, and we're going to talk about some really cool stuff today around the processes behind businesses, a little about her story, how to open businesses, the importance of involvement of local government, and then the next episode we'll talk more about how the housing market actually affects small business and the way you got to consider it when you are a small business and how that relates to your staffing and your employment and all that. So stay tuned. Please like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. We're on the YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Please like, follow us. It's going to be a couple good episodes. Listen to them. All right, everybody, episode 17 here, Nate, and we have Rebecca Jones, Mayor of San Marcos here. We're going to talk about some pretty neat stuff, specifically about processes around local business and how it's involved with the local government. She clearly, as a mayor, is going to have a lot better take on that than most of the people that we've had here. And one of the things I didn't do very well starting a business throughout the last 9 years was be involved in local government. Clearly, that's something I'm trying to get a lot better at. And so with that being said, she's going to give us some insight on her experience, maybe talk a little bit about you went from vice mayor and all that fun stuff, and then how you have some suggestions for small business out there relative to the processes of opening their own business and local government involvement.
Sure. Right. So I'm Rebecca Jones. I'm the mayor of San Marcos. I've been mayor since December 11th of 2018. Prior to that, I was a city council member from January of 2007. And then I have been vice mayor since 2012. Love our businesses in San Marcos. It's kind of interesting because a lot of people don't really see the correlation of the success of a city, but it's really based on your residents, how happy they are, but it's also your businesses because you need the property tax from the residents, but you need the sales tax from the businesses. So there is definitely a correlation. And when businesses thrive, the city thrives.
So talk a little bit about that then. You know, one of the things with the cities that I've got to know is that they're really big into wanting to support their local businesses. Everybody knows that local businesses are the ones that really help local government and the cities thrive. But how should a startup business or a business that's considering moving to, say, San Marcos, for your example, look at the local government and reach out for support and have a better understanding of what they can, some of the leverage points they can have and how it'll help them getting involved in the local government?
Well, interestingly enough, sometimes businesses are coming in and they want to open up. They're not really sure where to start. So they go to City Hall and they try to figure out the process. About 4 years ago, we hired an economic development manager because it's difficult. How do you start your business? So we hired her as sort of a liaison between our businesses and then also our city staff, because when businesses, like I said, thrive, then we thrive. And so it's a great mystery. That's what I call it. The great mystery of opening a business. Where do you start? Mm-hmm. And so you start at that first meeting at the front desk, but it's also great to reach out to your local electeds because we can help you through that process a little bit, but then we also in San Marcos have our economic development manager that can help you through that, because one of the things that we didn't really think about when we updated our general plan in 2012 is we have all of these uses that require a director's permit or a conditional use permit. And it really is standing in the way of businesses opening quickly. And one of the things that I plan on doing, and we are going to be updating our general plan, is taking some of those processes and eliminating them and really making it more businesses that are allowed by right if you follow certain criteria rather than having that extra, it's too onerous. And you, as a small business owner, you start out, you're spending all your time and effort on that, and generally you don't have another job. And so how do we figure out how to be encouraging to business rather than being a hindrance? And that's a big deal.
So how does that work? If I'm a small business owner, either opening an additional business or going to San Marcos, or any city for that matter, because every city is going to have their roadblocks. It's clearly not just one city. How do they know before they get too involved in signing a lease or all these other pretty major commitments that there's things like director's permits or conditional use permits or whatever the cities call them, so they can at least prepare for that? What's the best way of going about that?
Well, really, it's starting out at the front desk. So before you sign a lease, before you start spending any money on that property, you need to go to City Hall and figure it out, because it's a roadblock when you are coming in there. You're spending money already, because then the time is of the essence, and it's a problem because you really have spent too much money up front, and time is money.
Probably time too, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But you're also putting yourself at a disadvantage if you've already spent the money and you're not really sure what you have to do to open that business. So I always say, figure out where you want to go to City Hall and start to figure out what it is that's allowed by use, by right, and then also figure out for your particular business what it is that you need to do.
Yeah, you might be surprised, but I think, I know a specific business actually in the city that wants to do this, and they're going through this right now, which is probably why we're discussing it. But it doesn't necessarily have to be like an enormously risky business, say like the marijuana business or something like that, where cities are going to be a lot more responsive to say, hey, I don't know if that's what we want here. You just got to understand what the right of use is there and understand what the city wants. And that should really be a part of the business plan that's developed prior to getting into the sexy part of owning your own business, which is looking at buildings and all that stuff. That's all stuff that's fun, right? Writing the business plan, that's kind of like, it's busy work, but the reality is it could save a significant amount of time on the back end.
It is. And, the processes are not something that you just walk in and you automatically know what you're supposed to do. Sure. Unfortunately, they're just not that easy. But I discussed that we're going to be updating our general plan. I'd like to see easier, streamlined processing, because like I said, if you're spending all that money up front and you're not opening your doors, you're not generating income, that is a roadblock. And that is why a lot of new businesses fail, because they are spending so much time and effort and money up front, and then it takes you a while to gain that momentum and get those customers in the door. So unfortunately, we are a roadblock to that, but I want to end that. So having more businesses that are allowed by right, having specific zones. But also one of the things is, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. We had the San Marcos shooting range come to us. They were a successful business already within our city. It's a gun shop, so they started out just as a gun shop. And they said, we want to build a shooting range, an indoor shooting range where we can train people, which I'm always for, safe gun use. And so they wanted to open a business, but we didn't have any zoning that allowed them. And so I said, well, listen, and staff kept telling them no. They came to me, and Mayor Desmond actually, and they said, well, we want to open this business. What do you think? I said, well, just because we don't have zoning for it doesn't mean that we shouldn't have it. As long as it's a safe business, a business that we already know that we know they do a great job. Yes, exactly. Why not be open to that? People have the right to have a safe place to discharge their gun. We don't want them to go to places that are prohibited. So we want to make sure it's done safely. So what we did is we sat down, as a council, and figured out, well, first staff handled some of it, but they brought forward to us a change in our zoning ordinance that would allow this business in certain locations that would be not near elementary schools, that sort of thing. And it's really being flexible and saying, okay, you've got more businesses that should be allowed by right, but maybe they aren't, and so being open to that and more flexible. So
it's a lot more helpful, yeah. So would you suggest then people that want to open businesses, even if it's something that maybe isn't per the the regular rules, that they could go and approach their electives and the mayor and say, hey, these are things we're dealing with. What are your suggestions? It's not like it's an end-all be-all if somebody says no.
Yeah, there are a few businesses that we don't allow. Sure. So we don't allow dispensaries or marijuana sales. You can follow the state law and you can grow your own plants. I forget how many that is. I want to say 3, but I could be wrong on that.
Not my thing.
Yeah, not my thing either. But anyway, so we don't allow dispensaries in our city. That's one use that we don't allow. And there are a couple that we don't allow, but for the most part, if you have a business that is not federally illegal, then we would allow that.
And so if they have these like permits, or say that I decide to open up another business in one of along the 78 corridor, and it's maybe not San Marcos, and they have some type of conditional use or director's permit, would you say if I know there's going to be that delay, I could try to get that expedited in some capacity by reaching out to local officials? Is that something you'd suggest to small business? Or?
Well, I guess that would depend. The first step is always don't quit your job and start gung ho, because it really is going to take you some time to open up and get through all of the red tape, which unfortunately there is red tape, but get through the red tape, and then because you're not going to be generating income during that time. So if it's possible, try to do this, as you have a job already, and then do it at the same time. That way you've got, some income, you're not starving.
Create a systematic approach to it versus
exactly. And really a sensible, okay, it's a little bit of a risk opening a new business, but the rewards obviously can be very good, but you just have to be really gauging what that risk level is. And so going to City Hall, going to the planning desk, saying this is what I want to do, this is where the property is located, and then moving from there. And if it comes down to it and staff is telling you no, the policy is set by the electeds, and that's why I mentioned, talking to your electeds is always good, to find out if there is an appetite to support a business that maybe the zoning doesn't allow.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think talk a little bit about the economic development manager, because I've met 3 or 4 of them now throughout different cities and electives. And what would be, 3 years ago, I would have had no idea even how to approach people like that, who they are, how to find out about them, how to even get in contact with them. Because you tend to start thinking of people like a mayor or other people as like these people up in the clouds that you'll never be able to meet, right? But as you start realizing they're just human beings, mind you, they probably have very busy schedules. But if you can get the time in front of them, how would somebody even start to do that?
Well, the local elected officials are the business. We think of business, right? And so we always want new businesses. It's always great to reach out to your electeds, because we're the ones that are setting the policy. Again, we can say, yes, we support that kind of a use, or maybe we don't for whatever reason. But really it's trying to figure out the process. Reaching out to your electeds, we are the residents and the businesses, kind of connection. So reaching out to the electeds is really a good first step. If you go to City Hall and you sit you hit a roadblock or whatever. And then what happens is we're the ones who will be figuring out, okay, this is what your next step should be. Setting you up with the economic development manager is really important, because they're going to help you through the process, because it's true, we don't as electeds usually have time. It's a part-time position. I'm working far more than 50 hours a week. I know, it's hilarious. I know. Part-time. Part-time, full-time. But a lot of electeds do have second jobs. I don't happen to have one right now. But it's really important to reach out to electeds, because then you can have people telling you, this is the next path that you could take, and really helping you move it along. And I'm a huge champion of businesses, because I realize what they do for a community. And I always am looking around and thinking, okay, how do I make the city more well-rounded, keep people here, but it's also keeping the jobs where your residents live, because otherwise you're spending a lot of time on the freeway, commuting, and that really takes away from your quality of life. I look at the big picture.
I think we'll talk a little bit about that on the next episode, because keeping the jobs is pretty critical, but I think there's some components to that we can't always control, but at least have to be conscious of, and that's going to be housing prices and how that can actually affect small business and employment. So you'll hear that here on the following episode, but I think it's something that people tend not to think about. Frankly, I haven't. But I think that once her and I off camera had that discussion at one point a few weeks back, started making me really think about the hiring within Green Guard and some of the other businesses I'm associated with, and that actually could be a component to it. So it's quite interesting. Can you talk a little bit about, for people that just don't understand, and I guess at a very higher level, what an economic development manager does? What would be, how do they help? They help you through all the process as far as permitting and all that, or what do they specifically do?
Yes, but it's also retention. Okay. Because truly, if you have businesses that are starting out in San Marcos, for instance, and they're moving on because they're growing, because they don't know that there is an option to grow within the city, you're really missing out. So what our economic development manager does, her name is Tess Radmill, she does a great job. What she does is she keeps track of all of the vacant spaces. So that if businesses are within the city, then they have opportunities to grow, and she knows where those locations are. Okay. So she has a very close relationship with local real estate brokers for commercial property. But it's also helping you through the process if you need a conditional use permit. Again,
that, right?
again, the great mystery, but she also helps you through that, right? And so she is really kind of a, I don't want to say hand holder, but sort of a hand holder, helping, because not everyone that's opened a business has done it before. And so if it's your first time, you need help. And so it's really important to have someone really helping you through that process. And so Tessa's job is to know where the property is located, but also we have business visits that we just started a couple of years ago. And what that is she goes around and she meets random businesses and says, we'd like to do a business visit. And it's usually 2 council members. So it could be the mayor and a council member, mayor pro tem and a council member, or 2 council members. But what happens is we go and we meet with businesses, find out what their needs are, hear more about their business, so then we can also spread the word. I'm big into using my social media.
Social media, pay attention.
I love promoting our businesses and new businesses. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. It's all about really the success of your community has to do with also your businesses, because it's the sales tax, property tax, but it's also keeping our residents within the community and improving their quality of life. So making sure that you're doing all of that, just keeping everyone on track and, well-rounded city. One of the things I do too is I rarely meet at City Hall for business or visits with folks, because I like to go out in the community. So I always say, oh, you want to meet for coffee? And I don't go to Starbucks. I actually go to mom and pops. And so what I do is I say, oh, have you been to this business? Yes or no? If it's no, I say, great. Well, then I'm going to introduce you to a new business. And I think that's one way of showcasing your businesses, where you're getting people out to explore the community. And I believe wholeheartedly in that.
And it's the same thing with you and I when we had coffee a couple weeks ago at Grit over there in San Marcos, right? Yeah. I've been there now 3 times since, but I hadn't been there in a number of months prior to that, right? Yeah. But you have to be exposed to those types of things, so it's actually a good way of indirectly marketing it without checking it out. So it's nice.
Exactly right.
I like it. See, it worked, didn't it?
It did. It did. And I hear that all the time. And not only that, but when you're talking about residents, introducing them to new businesses, they tell all of their friends too and their neighbors. And really, it solidifies the success of the community and the businesses.
I agree 100%. Yeah. So that was episode 17. So today, I just wanted to recap on this. We discussed the importance of understanding all the local codes, laws, use laws when it comes to wanting to open a business in any city specifically, but we were talking about San Marcos with the mayor. The importance of understanding your local electeds, since they're the ones putting these rules and laws in place, and the importance of making sure you have a business plan prior to taking the complete leap of quitting your job and all that fun stuff. So make it more of a systematic business approach. Let me make sure I get everything in place before then I make that jump, because a lot of that isn't exorbitantly time consuming. Can it take time to get it done and wait for the permits and all that stuff? Yes, but it doesn't require a ton of time for you to get to that point as far as paperwork and all that. Once that stuff's established, then you can move on to the more fun stuff as far as signing leases and all that. So.
Oh, and decorating and all of that.
Painting and all that stuff, right?
Yes,
Which some people love or hate, I guess. But
yeah.
Was that a well put there as far as?
I think so. Yep. Okay. I think pretty comprehensive.
So that was episode 17, Startup Nation with Rebecca Jones. Thanks for listening. Please like, subscribe, share, follow, all that stuff. We greatly appreciate it. Thanks.